Around, one of the first questions asked, where is the Nobel Peace Medal and Award? We'd like to see it. So evidently that stands out maybe more than anything else.
The Nobel Peace Prize Gold Medal here in Tennessee. Awarded to Cordell Hull, lawyer, congressman, secretary of state, and father of the United Nations. The Peace Prize and hundreds of other mementos from the life of this man are at the Cordell Hull Birthplace and Museum in Byrdstown, Pickett County, Tennessee. This is Lynn Folk with David Hassler of Byrdstown, who was instrumental in founding the Museum Association and who developed the plans for the log museum building located next to the log cabin where Hull was born. Our museum tour began with a look at the handsome Nobel Gold Medal and scroll, then on to another case of medals.
Mr. Hull was not only the father of the United Nations, but he was the father of the Good Neighbor policy. The Good Neighbor policy was with Latin American countries, and he was on very friendly terms with the Latin American countries. Nearly all of these awards here was given to Mr. Hull by those countries, and you can see there's a whole case full of them.
Every one of the medals has a colorful ribbon with it, and most of them, I guess, are gold or silver, and also there's some that are inlaid with a lot of different stones. The whole case is a sight pleasing to the eye.
Yes, it is, and it's a credit to Mr. Hull, too.
And there are a number of photographs on the wall.
Well, these photographs are on the different state occasions. There were so many of them that we couldn't display them all.
Pictures of royalty in England and, so many other countries.
One of our favorite royalty that's here in the picture is Sergeant York, and he's, as you know, our neighbor from Fentress County up here. When he came back from World War I, he had a meeting with Mr. Hull and some of them, and this is the picture up here.
Next, a colorful display representing more honors for Cordell Hull.
These are our caps and gowns given to Mr. Hull when he was given honorary degrees at the different universities and colleges over the country.
Well, they're purple and red and green, yellow, and black. Beautiful.
Well, some of the pictures go with it.
Cordell Hull's books and personal journals are here, plus gifts from all over the world, including a carved jade piece from one of his contemporaries.
This is an emblem of peace, a dove that was presented to Mr. Hull by Prime Minister Winston Churchill. The next case here is his gavels presented to him different occasions, walking canes, his hat that he wore on the formal occasion, plus the flag that I understand that was draped on his casket.
It must have taken a long time to decide what things to display and what things just to hold back.
The items that are in here on display, they were first shipped from Washington down to Nashville to the Tennessee Library and Archives and stored away there in crates and barrels. And one of Mr. Hull's niece, I think, from down at Salina, had helped pack this stuff away, and she had tried to label it all as much as she could so that it could be identified later. Now, Mr. Hull had said that if ever there was a building suitable to house this material in Pickett County, that's where he wanted it to be brought. Well, when we started getting it all out and displaying it, we went and got his niece, and she came up and helped us with a lot of it.
And when was the actual museum building built here?
The museum was built up until 1972. On Cordell Hull's 100th birthday, we had the opening for the museum. Now, the cabin had been here for several years and had been opened by volunteer people. The Hull family dinner bell. It's been kept through the years here and was presented to the memorial here, and we put it up on a pole because we think that's where it belongs.
David Hassler at the Cordell Hull Museum and Birthplace in Byrdstown, Tennessee. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, the WPLN Foundation, and the Tennessee Department of Conservation. This is Lynn Folk.
What's interesting to me is that every exhibit changes the building and the atmosphere, and the building changes the paintings. Work, I find, is necessarily environmental. It either belongs in some place or it doesn't. And it's very interesting to see what happens to the gallery with a new exhibition.
When Alice Bingham chose Overton Square in Midtown Memphis as the site of her art gallery, she found an old building with a lot of historical background. It was once a hardware store, and after that it housed artists who lived and worked there. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope with Alice Bingham as we talked about her challenges and reasons for starting this business. Sitting in the gallery, we were surrounded by contemporary paintings hanging on the walls of brick and wood. All of this creating the environment which she knew from the beginning was perfect for what she wanted to do.
I walked in and knew that this was it. It had the character that I wanted for contemporary art, which was enough space to have good perspective on the work, but not frightening. It's not cold. It has warmth and character. And I think that that's needed for people who are afraid of contemporary art. So I have to be able to show work that is contemporary and yet is not cold.
Do you have all contemporary work here?
Yes, and by that I mean the living artist. It is not necessarily all of one school, not necessarily abstract. It's simply I'm interested particularly in the living artist. My challenge was how to promote an artist without having to go to an art mecca, New York or Chicago or Los Angeles. There was a need for a gallery in Memphis to, what I felt the need was to show work which is of national reputation that would raise or elevate the level in this region, and then to show the best work of the region, and that the two would give the buyer the best possible chance of understanding of what is going on in the art world.
When did you open your gallery here?
In October of 1979.
Had you been involved in other galleries before you started this one?
No, this was absolutely a new adventure for me. I've always been involved with art in some way, both performing and visual. And I did have a gallery for a year in my house before moving to a public space. And in fact, I still use my house to show how a contemporary painting can be seen and appreciated in a traditional setting.
Well, I'm sure that would be of great interest to prospective buyers also. Do they sometimes take things into their own homes to try them out?
Yes, I encourage that. I feel that buying a work is really like adopting a child, that one should know that, it really belongs to you. And there are very few people who buy paintings for investment. Most people buy them because they really love them and they want to live with them. So I encourage people to take them home and be sure that that's exactly what they want.
I'd like to know about some of your thoughts as you contemplated opening a gallery. You were taking quite a risk, weren't you?
Yes, my feeling was that I wanted to do something that I personally would grow from. That if I'm going to have a 5 and possibly 6 day a week job, it should be something creative and valuable to me.
Are you an artist yourself?
I've gotten brave enough to say that I am artistic, but I am not an artist. I think there are very few really true artists.
Alice Bingham in her gallery in Overton Square in Memphis, an area which is filled with shops and restaurants, attracting both tourists and the people who live in the city. Alice is also involved in other arts projects, the Memphis Opera, other musical and theatrical organizations, and she was curator for the first Tennessee Heritage Collection exhibition, which circulated throughout the state and has its permanent home in Memphis. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and Johnson & Higgins, insurance brokers and employee benefit consultants. This is Lynn Folk.
Most of the work done, I would hesitate to guess, in the arts, the dance, crafts, artwork is done by park and recreation units across the state of Tennessee, local units. So arts are around us in settings that we think of as recreational, but they're really recreational.
Tennessee Department of Conservation Commissioner Charles Howell, a strong supporter of the arts, especially in historical preservation and recreation. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope with Charles Howell in his office as we discuss the relationship between conservation and the arts and culture.
It relates to the arts because the arts are part of culture. Many of us think of the arts as being culture. Culture is made up of lots of things. It's a sum total of things, which include the arts. It also includes knowing who we are and where we came from through historical activities, archaeological activities, and knowing about folkways and why we behave the way we do. We have in the Department of Conservation a separate unit which is devoted to cultural kinds of activities, which is primarily made up of our Historic Commission and the Archaeology Division. In conservation, we have more museum space, for instance, where we display artifacts, we display art, we display cultural kinds of things than anybody else in the state. We have museums in most of our state parks, plus we have all the museum houses that are operated by the Tennessee Historic Commission. So we have a lot of things in the Department of Conservation that relate to art, to the humanities, to culture, and we're very proud of our activities in that area.
I think sometimes the public is not really aware of this. The public may think of conservation as being like soil conservation and trees and forests, and they don't think about the arts maybe.
Those are all very important things, and they certainly need to be conserved. But I came to the Department of Conservation with a background in historic preservation and conservation. I had taught at O'Moore School, and as a matter of fact, designed their first curriculum at O'Moore School in the field of historic conservation. I came to this department with that background, a strong feeling about architecture as an art form, but a strong feeling about architecture as a cultural form in the broadest sense that helps us know who we are and where we came from. My granddaddy was a kind of an artist. As you can see on the wall, the stationery from his firm that was done about 1910 or 1915, and it has on it a piece of art. He was a painting contractor, a sign painter, and so forth, but I come from a background that has a very strong feeling about the connection between all the arts and between all the kind of cultural things that help us understand that. Our mission in the Department of Conservation is to plan, promote, protect, and to conserve this state's natural, cultural, recreational, and historical resources for the benefit of the people of the state of Tennessee. So our job here is to deal with all of those things, not only the trees in the forest, but the buildings that we see around us, to help interpret for the people of Tennessee the importance of the cultural resources, the archaeological sites, the mounds at Pinson Mounds, various Indian sites across the state, Native American sites across the state of Tennessee. We have museums the museum at Fall Creek Falls is a very nice museum down there, the Betty Dunn Nature Center and so forth, but there are cultural things down there, art things down there. We have an art display at Fall Creek Falls of some very fine artwork on permanent display as well as a revolving display. We do this at many of our sites. We think we're on the cutting edge of sharing the best of cultural things with the people across Tennessee.
Tennessee Commissioner of Conservation Charles Howell, whose department is also involved in the Main Street program in connection with Tennessee Homecoming 86.
There's a feeling about people who are genuine and about towns that are genuine that are natural attractions. People want to go back to those places. You soon wear out with the movie, the Western type movie set kind of town. But you don't wear out with a town that's really the real place, the real thing. So places like Gallatin, Columbia, Brownsville, Greenville are going to be coming alive, being themselves.
This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and the WPLN Foundation. This is Lynn Folk.
I actually had to hang from the ceiling and repair some damage that was done to the eagle on the top. Yeah, I'm not afraid of heights. In fact, I think it's rather exciting. We had safety belts we wore the whole time. As people watched me walk up, they kind of shuddered and wondered how we could ever do it. Because we actually climbed up the sculpture. There are ladders on the sides that are incorporated into the design. If you look at it from a distance, they look like they're ornamental, but they're actually safety ladders that you can use to climb up the sculpture.
Metal sculptor and artist Lynn Swensson Walker had a lot of experiences like this while constructing the crystal gazebo in the Conservatory at Nashville's Opryland Hotel. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope with Lynn Walker, who now lives in Valparaiso, Indiana, as we discussed this steel sculptural fountain with its special design which allows water to fall 75 feet and not splash, and which provides points of interest for viewers looking at it from all levels. The design and structure of Crystal Gazebo was the result of collaboration by Lynn Walker, her partner Richard Johnston in Utah, and her father, architect Earl Swensson of Nashville.
My father designed the conservatory, had an object in mind for the center of the conservatory. He wanted to have water that fell from about 60 feet in the air down. He consulted with a lot of other firms that worked with fountains or that worked with sculptures, and they said it could never be done because the water would be too loud once it got down the 60 feet. It would also splash. And so he had pretty much ruled that out for a while, and he came to me, and I had just finished my Master of Fine Arts at the University of Utah, and I said, well, why not? And he told me that he wanted to have the water fall from 75 feet in the air. He also told me he wanted to have it something that people could become involved with walking under it. He liked the idea of a gazebo type form which would incorporate planting on it, because then in that way it would flow in with the rest of the conservatory because of the planting. How do you get water up that high, make it not splash so much, and also cut down on the sound? So we devised a system using stainless steel cords that are coated with plastic, and the water dribbles down these cords like drizzle or rain drizzle, and that way it's able to control the fall. It's able to give you the sense of water, the smell of water, the moisture, the activity of water without having the noise and the large splash.
I've seen the water coming down. I wondered how it was so well regulated.
Stainless steel cord, there are 136 cords coming down. We had to have that many to give the appearance of rain. They also wanted the sculpture to not conflict with the building. They didn't want it to block any views. That's why the sculpture is light and airy. It picks up on the truss work in the conservatory, which is very architectural. Also, we wanted it to be active from 3 different vision areas. On the floor of the conservatory where you have the pool and the water dropping, they wanted it to be active from the middle part where you have the walkway. They also wanted to have something for the people who are up in the windows of the hotel to look at. So the piece was designed, the eagle on the top, to be a view for the people who were in the hotel rooms. And then you have the walkway, which you have the cords and the water dropping down on the cords, which you can look at. Also, there's a buttress that's ornamented, and that truss work in there is also very interesting for people on the walkway to look at. And then on the bottom you have the pool and the plants.
Aren't there lights on the gazebo?
Yes, there are lights
too?
that outline the whole
Like
gazebo.
bulb
right.
lights.
It's a very festive look. It outlines the sculpture at night, and it's a fun place for people to go.
Lynn Swensson Walker, designer and builder of the Opryland Hotel Conservatory Crystal Gazebo Fountain. Her metal sculpture work extends to other forms, expressing her observations of desert rocks and colors, and these have been exhibited in Chicago and Salt Lake City. And she has a February show at the Nashville Artist Guild Gallery. This program made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and the WPLN Foundation. This is Lynn Folk.
You get your story by taking the wallpaper off and you see what's underneath, and taking the floors up and see what the bottom floor looks like, by seeing what the structure is for the parts of the building, and then seeing how all of that fitted together before walls were added. You can tell the difference between an original wall and a wall that was built later. As we are becoming more popular in the end books, we have some of the very best clientele of the end travelers around the country, including many corporate executives and just people that love the traditional, gracious, slow inn living.
The story of the Hale Springs Inn at Rogersville, revealed by wallpaper, walls, floors, and furniture. This is Tennessee's oldest inn, built in 1824, and it has recently been restored by the present owner, Captain Carl Netherland Brown. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope in Rogersville with the inn's manager, Sheldon Livesay, who supervised the restoration and did much of the work himself.
We had originally owned the building, and we sold the building to Captain Carl Netherland Brown, who has been gracious enough to use his ideas and restore the building and have it fixed as nicely as any of the inns in the United States in traditional New England style. The building was built in 1824, and that makes it the very oldest inn in all of Tennessee, and if I'm not mistaken, it's the oldest business in all of Tennessee that's still in the same location, continually operated all through the years. So it's kind of unique in that manner. The rooms are very large, some 25 by 25, which is about 500 square feet upwards to 600 square feet. We have added chandeliers to the rooms, and we have the rheostats on them so you can turn them down to be romantic. We have fireplaces in all but one room, original to the building, and our guests are allowed to build fires in the wintertime. We have heart pine floors, if you can imagine over the radio thinking of the real rich red pine floors, and we've gone back down to the original floors in all of the building and accented those with a Persian type oriental carpet. We have canopy beds in some of the rooms, poster beds in some of the rooms, in all of the rooms, original antique furniture.
Hale Springs Inn was originally known as McKinney's Tavern. It served as Union headquarters during the Civil War, and later, in 1884, the building took the name of Hale Springs Hotel because it was near the Hale Springs Resort, and it served as a stopover house for stagecoach passengers going there.
This at one time was a stopover house. It was called the Hale Springs Stopover House because it was a stopover where people would stay on their way to another area, which was a mineral resort springs 10 miles north of here. And we feel like it again is becoming a stopover. It's mid-area between the north and the south. There's not very many inns in this area, and as people would stay maybe in Virginia or Maryland in one of the inns, they can stay here on the way south or vice versa on the way north, and it's just a treat staying. We try to treat everybody extra special because they really are.
It was once a stopover for Presidents Jackson, Polk, and Johnson, and now completely restored to its original elegance. It's so popular that it's difficult to get overnight reservations, especially as Rogersville's Homecoming 86 approaches.
Homecoming 86 will be exciting in Rogersville. We have a fall festival already. It's called our Heritage Days. The town is blocked off. We have original traditional crafts. We have exhibits. This past year we had 4 different locations that country and bluegrass and gospel bands were playing continually all the time. Our homecoming will be even an addition to that because we're going to take the July the 4th week, an entire week, and we have a secret that we're working on, and until it's confirmed we can't publicize it, but we are one of the pilot communities for Homecoming 86. So we have a whole lot that we're working on, and excitement is building towards it.
Sheldon Livesay, manager of the restored Hale Springs Inn in Rogersville, Tennessee. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible by the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and Johnson & Higgins of Tennessee, insurance brokers and employee benefit consultants. This is Lynn Folk. Lee and Jean Schilling, who sing and play dulcimer, auto harp, recorder, and harmonica in a favorite number from one of their albums, Porches of the Poor. The Schillings founded the FolkLife Center of the Smokies in Cosby, Tennessee. They direct and produce the annual Folk Festival of the Smokies, and they manage the Dulcimer and Harp Convention, which takes place every year on their premises in Cosby. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope when I talked with Jean Schilling at their home and shop, where nearby their crew of more than 100 employees is producing craft work and folk instruments of all kinds.
We have our woodworking shop down the road a piece, and we're producing hammer dulcimers and bowed psalteries and various accessories and other craft type items.
Do you have a sort of a museum of instruments, or is that part of your gift shop?
Well, we have our own personal collection of instruments. Just recently, our dulcimer collection was on exhibit at East Tennessee State University at the museum there. And of course, we have other instruments too that we've collected down through the years.
I understand that once a year you have a dulcimer convention here.
This year was our 8th annual for the dulcimer and harp convention in June. Workshops consist of teaching very basic beginning playing of the dulcimers and harps to very advanced levels. Building workshops. Of course, we have other type of workshops of interest, even for the children. You know, we have people of all ages that come. Our workshop leaders, most of them are teachers, and some of them that have written the books that we carry and have done the recordings, and then other people that aren't teachers. We have one workshop leader that's a surgeon, a brain surgeon, that plays the dulcimer. He's held some of the workshops here for us. So they come from all walks of life, the instructors and the participants, you know.
You must have a lot of tourists come by. Where do they come from, and what are they mostly interested in?
Like I said a while ago, even for the Dulcimer Convention, they do come from all over the country and out of the country too. Of course, we've been working with the National Park. We finished up our 15th year of doing heritage type programs through the music, telling about the people that lived in the area and their customs, folklore, and all. And we've met literally thousands of people, you know. And the people that come here, for the biggest part, they've heard about us various ways, and it's not like that we have people just dropping off the street, you know, because you're here and you see it's a rural mountain area and kind of off the beaten path. But we like it.
You must have a terrific mail order business.
We do, and we distribute the instruments, the books, records, all the accessories for them to small folk shops, instrument makers, and we're hoping to interest the larger music stores in the folk instruments.
And I understand that you're working very hard to keep all of this authentic.
We're doing our part, and as part of our business, we have our own record label, Traditional Records, and we record the old-time traditional music more than the contemporary. And we have our book publishing company, so we published several books, and through those things, trying to pass on the things that we feel like might be forgotten.
Jean Schilling at Jean's Dulcimer Shop on Highway 32 in Cosby, Tennessee, in the Smoky Mountains. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and Johnson & Higgins of Tennessee, insurance brokers and employee benefit consultants. This is Lynn Folk.
I I try to make a paper that's responsive to what I want to say. When I first started working with paper, prior to that, I was a color field painter, and I had only worked with abstracts, and the subject matter was usually metaphysical. When I went to the South Seas, my concerns were more with the material. I lived in Samoan Islands in 1971, and it changed my work radically.
California artist Bob Nugent, whose artwork in handmade paper represents his personal diary and his interest in the sea and experimenting with various raw materials, presenting these materials in a documentary fashion assembled as collages. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope with Bob Nugent as his first Nashville exhibition opened at Cumberland Gallery. The retrospective show including work done over a 15-year period, representing 3 stages in his training and creative efforts, the most recent indicative of the Japanese approach to paper as art, which he learned while working with craftsmen in Japan. Another segment, assemblages in cotton paper, done when he worked in a Western European style in Italy and England. And this retrospective collection begins with constructions done in mulberry bark cloth, made in the traditional way of the Polynesians.
I started making paper and working with natural dyes and beating mulberry bark cloth in order to get the material to work with. And I responded much more to the material than being concerned with a particular subject matter. And since that time, I've been working with images about letters, about correspondence, about the nature of paper, why we use paper, how we use it. Having lived on a small island for a year and experiencing a lot of things about the sea, working with men who depend upon the sea for their living and corresponding with people who live on small islands, I started a series called the Ancient Mariner series. Packages and groups of letters and so forth that are my fantasies about what a ship's captain would take to sea with him on any given voyage. I think of these small little packages as kind of treasure troves, as if I was an archaeologist or an anthropologist who had discovered these things, and in pulling out their ingredients, discovering much of the history of the captain and his ship and those kinds of things. And then since that time, the work has changed to becoming very documentation-oriented. I've buried poles in swamps in different parts of the land. I've set things out for 2 or 3 years so that the weather could affect them. And then in retrieving these objects and cleaning them off and working on them myself, they become a visual record of the site rather than a literary one. Documentation then became a very important part of my work in the late 70s. And since that time, I have done quite a bit of traveling, and most of the time, the images that I work with are very much related to the places that I've been, personal experiences. So I guess all of them, in a sense, have become somewhat of a diary of mine.
So this is really a very personal experience all the way through for you.
Right. I've never really detached myself from the work at all. Some artists plan a painting, plan a drawing, and then execute it from beginning to end. I've never been able to do that. I've always responded to the work individually. Even when I've worked in a series where I've worked on 7 or 8 pieces at one time, there always seems to be a dialogue going on from one piece to the next, and one kind of tells the other the way it should be, and then is referred back to a previous work. And my work has always taken on that characteristic, so I have a very strong connection and carry on a conversation with the work visually as it's being made.
It must be especially satisfying for that reason.
I think it is. The more personal the work becomes and the more introspective you're able to be with the work, the more satisfying it is. For me, the work is, or shows, I should say, a side of myself that I have kept quiet, that I'm not able to work with in any other way. And I believe that if I was able to write those things, I would be a writer, a poet, rather than a visual artist.
Bob Nugent, whose handmade paper constructions have been seen in more than 200 group shows and 35 one-man shows throughout the United States, Europe, the South Pacific, and the Orient. Also, there have been innumerable articles about him and his art in major publications. In Nashville, he's represented by Cumberland Gallery, and his work has been included in group shows in Knoxville and Johnson City. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and the Nashville chapter of the Tennessee Society of Certified Public Accountants. This is Lynn Folk.